Karen's face twisted into a mask of outrage as she stormed out of the restaurant, her designer purse swinging wildly. She'd just been caught in the middle of her latest scheme, faking a case of food poisoning to get a free meal. But this time, the chef had outsmarted her. It had started innocently enough. Karen and her husband, Greg, had decided to celebrate their anniversary at a trendy new eatery in the heart of the city. As they perused the menu, Karen spotted an opportunity to score a free meal. "Oh, Greg, I think I'm going to be sick," she moaned, clutching her stomach. "This food must be contaminated. I can't believe they would serve this to us." Greg looked on, both exasperated and embarrassed, as Karen continued her dramatic display. She groaned and writhed in her seat, drawing the attention of the nearby diners. The manager, sensing a potential PR disaster, hurried over to their table. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. "No, everything is not all right," Karen snapped. "I've been poisoned by this dreadful food. I demand you comp our entire meal and offer us a gift card for our trouble." The manager's eyes narrowed as he studied Karen's flushed face and clenched fists. Something about her performance didn't sit right with him. He excused himself and returned moments later with the restaurant's head chef. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry to hear you're unwell," the chef said, his tone dripping with false sympathy. "However, I can assure you that our food is of the highest quality and safety standards. In fact, I'd be more than happy to show you the kitchen and explain our meticulous preparation process." Karen's face fell as the chef gestured towards the open kitchen. She knew she'd been caught, but her pride wouldn't allow her to back down. "That won't be necessary," she huffed. "I demand a refund and a free meal for my trouble. This is completely unacceptable." The chef's expression hardened. "Actually, ma'am, I think it is necessary. You see, we have a strict policy against customers who attempt to defraud our establishment, and I have reason to believe you've pulled this stunt before." With that, the chef pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. Suddenly, the table was filled with the sound of Karen's voice, recounting a nearly identical story at a different restaurant. Karen's face drained of color as she realized her scheme had been foiled. The surrounding diners, once sympathetic to her plight, now stared at her with a mix of disgust and amusement. "How dare you?" she sputtered, her voice shaking with rage. "You have no right to humiliate me like this." "On the contrary, ma'am," the chef replied coolly. "I have every right to protect my business from unscrupulous customers like yourself. Now, I suggest you and your husband leave before I have you escorted out." With that, Karen grabbed Greg's arm and stormed out of the restaurant, her dignity in tatters. As she burst through the doors, she swore to herself that she would have her revenge. No one made a fool of Karen and got away with it. As Karen stormed out of the restaurant, her mind raced with a plan for revenge. She couldn't believe the chef had the audacity to publicly humiliate her like that. No one made a fool of Karen and got away with it. Once back at home, Karen paced the living room, muttering under her breath. Greg, sensing the storm clouds gathering, wisely kept his distance. "That arrogant chef thinks he can just embarrass me in front of everyone," Karen fumed. "Well, he's about to learn a hard lesson." She plopped down on the couch and began furiously typing on her laptop. Greg peered over her shoulder, his curiosity piqued. "What are you doing, honey?" he asked cautiously. "What does it look like I'm doing?" Karen snapped. "I'm going to destroy that restaurant's reputation. They won't be laughing for long." Greg sighed, knowing there was no talking Karen out of her vengeful scheme. He'd learned long ago that it was best to just stay out of her way when she was in this kind of mood. Karen spent the next few hours crafting a scathing online review, filled with fabricated details about the restaurant's unsanitary conditions and rude staff. She even included a few ominous threats, hinting that she would be taking her complaints to the health department and the media. Satisfied with her work, Karen hit submit with a triumphant grin. "There, that should do the trick," she said, leaning back in her chair. But Karen's satisfaction was short-lived. The next morning, she woke to find that her review had been promptly removed from the restaurant's online page. Confused and irritated, she tried again, only to have her post disappear within minutes. "What the?" Karen muttered, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she attempted to post the review on various other platforms. But each time, it was swiftly taken down. Realizing that the restaurant had somehow managed to block her attempts at online retaliation, Karen let out a frustrated scream. She had underestimated her opponent, and now her plan for revenge lay in ruins. Defeated, Karen turned to Greg, who was watching the whole scene with a mixture of pity and amusement. "It's not funny, Greg," she snapped. "That restaurant is going to pay for what they did to me. I'll make sure of it." Greg simply shook his head and sighed. He knew better than to argue with Karen when she was in this kind of mood. All he could do was brace himself for the fallout, whatever form it might take. Karen's eyes narrowed as she contemplated her next move. She was not about to let the restaurant get the last laugh. This was war, and she was determined to emerge victorious. Karen's frustration only continued to grow as she realized her online attack on the restaurant had been thwarted. She paced the living room, muttering under her breath, while Greg watched with a growing sense of unease. "I can't believe they blocked my review," Karen fumed. "Those arrogant fools think they can just humiliate me and get away with it." Greg tentatively spoke up. "Honey, maybe you should just let this go. It's not worth getting yourself worked up over." Karen whirled around, her eyes blazing with fury. "Let it go. Are you kidding me? This is a matter of principle. That restaurant disrespected me, and I won't stand for it." Sensing that reason would get him nowhere, Greg wisely kept his mouth shut. He knew from experience that trying to talk Karen down from one of her vengeful crusades was a lost cause. Determined to find another way to get back at the restaurant, Karen began scouring the internet for ideas. She stumbled upon a forum where people shared tips and tricks for exacting revenge on unsuspecting businesses. "Aha!" Karen exclaimed, her face lighting up with a malicious grin. "This is perfect." She quickly jotted down a few notes and then turned to Greg. "Get ready, dear. We're going to give that restaurant a taste of their own medicine." Greg groaned inwardly, already dreading whatever harebrained scheme Karen had cooked up. But he knew better than to argue. All he could do was brace himself for the fallout. The next day, Karen and Greg arrived at the restaurant, armed with a hidden camera and a plan. As they were seated, Karen casually ordered a salad, carefully examining each bite for any sign of contamination. "Oh, Greg, I think there's something wrong with this salad," she suddenly exclaimed, her face contorting in a look of distress. "It tastes off. I think I'm going to be sick." The manager rushed over, his brow furrowed with concern. "Ma'am, is everything all right?" "No, everything is not all right," Karen cried, her voice rising in volume. "This salad is clearly spoiled. I demand a refund and compensation for this outrage." The manager glanced nervously around the restaurant, aware of the growing attention from the other diners. "I'm very sorry, ma'am. Let me take a look at that for you." As the manager bent down to inspect the salad, Karen subtly gestured to Greg, who discreetly pressed the record button on the hidden camera. The manager examined the salad, shaking his head. "I don't see anything wrong with this, ma'am. It appears to be fresh and properly prepared." "How dare you?" Karen shouted, slamming her fist on the table. "I know spoiled food when I taste it. This is completely unacceptable." The commotion had now drawn the attention of the chef, who came striding out of the kitchen. Karen's eyes narrowed as she recognized him as the same man who had humiliated her the day before. "Is there a problem here?" the chef asked, his tone laced with suspicion. "Yes, there is a problem," Karen exclaimed. "Your restaurant has served me spoiled food, and now you're refusing to make amends. I demand a full refund and compensation for this outrage." The chef's eyes narrowed as he studied Karen's flushed face and clenched fists. I'm sorry, ma'am, but I simply don't believe you. Our food is freshly prepared and of the highest quality. I think you're up to your old tricks again. Karen's face contorted with rage, and she opened her mouth to unleash another tirade. But before she could speak, the chef held up his hand. Save it, ma'am. We've got your little stunt on camera, and we won't be falling for it this time. Now, I suggest you and your husband leave before I call the police. With that, the chef turned and strode back into the kitchen, leaving a stunned and speechless Karen in his wake. As the chef walked away, leaving Karen fuming and defeated, she realized that her latest scheme had backfired spectacularly. Humiliated and frustrated, she turned to Greg, her eyes burning with a mixture of rage and desperation. Can you believe the audacity of that man? She hissed. He thinks he can just humiliate me and get away with it. Greg, who had been quietly observing the entire debacle, simply shrugged. Honey, maybe it's time to just let this go. You're only making things worse for yourself. Karen shot him a withering glare. Let it go. Are you kidding me? This is about more than just a free meal now. It's about my pride, my reputation. I can't let them win. Sensing that further argument would be futile, Greg sighed and fell silent, resigned to the fact that he was going to be dragged along for the ride, no matter how ill-advised Karen's actions might be. As they walked out of the restaurant, Karen's mind was racing, desperately searching for a way to turn the tables on the chef and his staff. She wouldn't rest until she had exacted her revenge. Over the next few days, Karen pored over online forums and social media, looking for any shred of information that could help her take down the restaurant. She scoured local news articles, searching for any potential scandals or controversies that she could exploit. Finally, after hours of digging, Karen stumbled upon a story about a recent health inspection at the restaurant. Apparently, the inspector had found several minor violations, including a few instances of improper food storage and handling. A wicked grin spread across Karen's face as she read the article. This was the break she had been looking for. Greg, get ready, she said, her voice dripping with triumph. We're going to pay that restaurant another visit. When the couple arrived at the restaurant, Karen was the picture of poise and composure. She greeted the host with a warm smile and requested to speak with the manager. Is there a problem, ma'am? The manager asked, eyeing her warily. Oh, no. Not at all, Karen replied sweetly. I just wanted to follow up on my complaint from the other day. I'm sure you understand that I take food safety very seriously, and I couldn't help but notice a recent health inspection report that highlighted some concerning issues at your establishment. The manager's face paled, and he shifted uncomfortably. I'm not sure what you're talking about, ma'am. Our restaurant has a spotless record when it comes to health and safety. Really? Karen's tone dripped with feigned concern. Because the report I saw mentioned several violations, including improper food storage and handling. I'm sure you can understand my hesitation about dining here, given the potential health risks. The manager's eyes widened, and he quickly glanced towards the kitchen, where the chef had emerged and was watching the exchange with a growing sense of unease. Ma'am, I can assure you that those issues have been addressed and corrected, the manager said, his voice trembling slightly. We take food safety extremely seriously, and our establishment has always maintained the highest standards. Karen tasked and shook her head. Well, I certainly hope so. After all, the last thing anyone wants is a case of food poisoning, right? I'd hate to have to report this to the health department or the local media. The manager's face drained of color, and he scrambled to appease Karen. Please, ma'am, there's no need for that. If there's anything we can do to make this right, just let us know. Karen's lips curled into a triumphant smile. Well, since you mention it, I do have a few suggestions. With a smug grin, Karen laid out her demands to the visibly shaken manager. First of all, I want a full refund for the meal my husband and I were so rudely denied the other day. And I want it in cash, not a gift card. The manager quickly nodded, eager to appease the irate customer. "Absolutely, ma'am. We'll take care of that right away." "Good, good," Karen purred, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "And secondly, I want a free meal for myself and my husband, as compensation for the distress you've caused me. Something high-end, mind you. None of that cheap, questionable fare you serve the rest of your customers." The manager's face fell, but he knew he had no choice but to acquiesce. "Of course, ma'am. Anything else?" Karen tapped her chin, pretending to ponder the matter. Well, since you mention it, there is one more thing. I'd like a handwritten apology from the chef, as well as a signed document stating that he will never again publicly humiliate a customer in such a manner." The manager's eyes widened, and he glanced nervously towards the kitchen, where the chef was watching the exchange with a growing sense of dread. "Ma'am, I'm not sure the chef will be willing to." "Oh, I think he will be," Karen interrupted, her voice dripping with venom. "Unless, of course, you'd like me to follow through on my threat to contact the health department and the media. I'm sure they'd be quite interested in the little health code violations I've uncovered." The manager swallowed hard, realizing he had no choice but to comply. "Very well, ma'am. I'll have the chef come out and speak with you personally." A few moments later, the chef emerged from the kitchen, his face a mask of barely concealed fury. Karen, however, was positively beaming. "Ah, there you are," she said, her tone saccharine. "I believe we have some unfinished business to attend to." The chef gritted his teeth, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. "What do you want, ma'am?" "Well, firstly, I want a written apology, acknowledging your atrocious behavior the other day," Karen said, her smile widening. "And I want your solemn promise that you'll never publicly humiliate a customer again, or else." The chef's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Karen thought he might refuse. But then, with a resigned sigh, he nodded. "Very well. I'll have the manager draw up the paperwork." As the manager hurried off to fetch the necessary documents, Karen leaned in closer to the chef, her eyes glinting with malice. "And just remember, if you ever cross me again, I'll make sure your precious little establishment is shut down for good," she hissed. "So I'd tread carefully if I were you." The chef said nothing, but the look of pure hatred in his eyes spoke volumes. Karen knew she had won this round, but she also knew that the war was far from over. As Karen and Greg left the restaurant, a triumphant grin spread across Karen's face. She had managed to turn the tables on the arrogant chef and his staff, extracting a full refund, a free meal, and a written apology, all while threatening to expose their health code violations. "Can you believe the nerve of that chef?" Karen gloated, glancing sideways at Greg. "He thought he could just humiliate me and get away with it. But now he knows better than to cross Karen." Greg remained silent, his expression a mixture of exasperation and concern. He knew better than to try and reason with Karen when she was in this kind of mood. As they drove home, Karen's mind was already worrying with her next move. She couldn't let the restaurant off the hook that easily, not after the way they had embarrassed her in front of the other diners. "I think it's time we paid a visit to the health department," Karen mused, her eyes narrowing with determination. "If there are any other violations we can uncover, I'll make sure that place is shut down for good." Greg's eyes widened with alarm. "Honey, don't you think you're taking this a bit too far? I mean, you got your refund and your free meal. Isn't that enough?" Karen shot him a withering glare. "Enough? Enough. Greg, you just don't understand. This is about more than just a free meal. It's about my pride, my reputation. I can't let them get away with humiliating me like that." Sensing that further argument would be futile, Greg fell silent, resigned to the fact that he was going to be dragged along for the ride, no matter how ill-advised Karen's actions might be. Over the next few days, Karen immersed herself in her mission, scouring local news reports and online forums for any information that could help her take down the restaurant. She made several anonymous calls to the health department, hinting at potential issues and urging them to conduct a thorough inspection. Meanwhile, the chef and his staff were on edge, waiting anxiously for the other shoe to drop. The signed apology and promise of better behavior had done little to appease Karen, and they knew that she was biding her time, plotting her next move. One day, as the restaurant was bustling with the lunchtime crowd, the door burst open, and a team of health inspectors strode in, clipboards in hand. The patrons murmured nervously, exchanging worried glances as the inspectors began their examination. The chef's heart sank as he watched the inspectors meticulously pore over every inch of the kitchen and dining area. He knew that Karen had somehow orchestrated this, and he braced himself for the worst. After what felt like an eternity, the lead inspector emerged from the kitchen, his face unreadable. He approached the chef and the manager, his expression grim. "Gentlemen, I'm afraid we found several serious violations during our inspection," the inspector announced, his voice grave. "Issues with food storage, improper handling of raw materials, and numerous other infractions. I'm going to have to shut this place down until you can demonstrate that you're in full compliance with all health and safety regulations." The chef's face drained of color, and the manager let out a strangled gasp. They had been blindsided, the victims of a carefully orchestrated plot by the vengeful Karen. As the restaurant was cleared and the inspectors began their work, Karen watched from a safe distance, a cruel smile playing on her lips. She had won this round, and she knew it. But the war was far from over. The news of the restaurant's temporary closure spread like wildfire through the local community, and Karen couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. She had managed to bring the arrogant chef and his establishment to their knees, all while maintaining a veneer of innocence. As the days wore on, the restaurant remained shuttered, with the chef and his staff working tirelessly to address the violations cited by the health inspectors. Karen, meanwhile, continued to monitor the situation closely, gleefully watching as the once thriving eatery struggled to stay afloat. But Karen's victory was short-lived. One day, as she was scrolling through the local news website, she stumbled upon a headline that sent a chill down her spine. "Disgruntled customers suspected of orchestrating health department sting." With a sinking feeling, Karen read the article, which detailed how the restaurant had managed to trace the anonymous tips to the health department back to her. The chef and his staff had gone on the offensive, painting Karen as a vengeful, entitled customer bent on destroying their livelihood. "This is an outrageous attempt by a disgruntled customer to cripple our business," the chef was quoted as saying. "We've worked hard to build a reputation for excellence, and we won't let someone like Karen ruin that." Karen's face burned with a mixture of rage and embarrassment. She had underestimated the chef's resolve, and now her carefully crafted scheme was unraveling before her eyes. Determined to regain the upper hand, Karen launched a barrage of scathing online reviews, each one more scathing than the last. She painted the restaurant as a cesspool of health code violations and rude, incompetent staff, all while carefully hiding her own role in the fiasco. But the chef and his team were prepared this time. They quickly mobilized their own army of loyal customers, who flooded the review sites with glowing praise for the restaurant, effectively neutralizing Karen's attacks. Frustrated and increasingly desperate, Karen resorted to more underhanded tactics. She began making anonymous calls to the health department, reporting new alleged violations in the hopes of keeping the pressure on the restaurant. However, the chef and his staff were not to be trifled with. They had hired a team of private investigators to monitor Karen's movements and activities, and they were quick to uncover her involvement in the latest wave of health code complaints. Confronted with the evidence, Karen's bluff was called, and she found herself in an increasingly precarious position. The restaurant had gone on the offensive, filing a lawsuit against her for defamation and harassment, and Karen knew that she was running out of options. As the legal battle raged on, Karen's once confident demeanor began to crumble. She realized that she had bitten off more than she could chew, and that the chef and his team were proving to be far more resilient and resourceful than she had anticipated. The once confident Karen found herself on the defensive, desperately scrambling to salvage her tattered reputation and avoid the looming threat of legal consequences. The tables had turned, and the hunter had become the hunted. As the legal battle between Karen and the restaurant dragged on, the once confident Karen found herself in an increasingly precarious position. The chef and his team had amassed a formidable array of evidence against her, including surveillance footage and a trove of data documenting her history of fraudulent complaints. Faced with the prospect of a damaging public trial and the potential for significant financial penalties, Karen's resolve began to crumble. The relentless pressure from the restaurant's legal team, coupled with the growing public backlash against her entitled behavior, had taken a profound toll. One day, as Karen sat in her living room, surrounded by a stack of legal documents, she finally admitted defeat. With a heavy sigh, she turned to Greg, her eyes rimmed with tears. I can't do this anymore," she confessed, her voice trembling. "They've got me dead to rights, Greg. I don't know how, but they've managed to uncover everything. I'm facing criminal charges, and the lawsuit could bankrupt us." Greg, who had remained largely silent throughout the ordeal, simply nodded. "I tried to tell you, honey. This was never going to end well. You let your pride and ego get the better of you. And now we're all paying the price." Karen's lips quivered, and she buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking with sobs. "I just wanted to teach them a lesson, to show them that they couldn't humiliate me and get away with it. But now I'm the one who's going to be humiliated in front of everyone." Greg reached out and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I know, Karen. I know. But you brought this on yourself. All you can do now is try to make things right before it's too late." Wiping her eyes, Karen nodded reluctantly. "You're right. I have to make things right. I have to face the consequences of my actions, no matter how painful it may be." With a renewed sense of determination, Karen reached for the phone and dialed the restaurant's number. After a tense exchange, she agreed to a meeting with the chef and the manager, determined to make amends and hopefully avoid the impending legal disaster. When the day of the meeting arrived, Karen walked into the restaurant with her head held high, but her heart was pounding with a mixture of trepidation and resolve. The chef and the manager greeted her coolly, but they were willing to hear her out. With a trembling voice, Karen apologized for her behavior, acknowledging the harm she had caused and the damage she had done to the restaurant's reputation. She offered to make a substantial financial restitution and even suggested that she could help them with their social media and online presence to help repair the harm she had caused. The chef and the manager listened in silence, their expressions unreadable. Finally, the chef spoke up, his voice measured and calm. "We appreciate your apology, Karen, and we're willing to consider your offer of restitution and assistance. But you have to understand that the damage you've done goes far beyond just the financial impact. You've betrayed the trust of our customers and our community, and that's not something that can be easily repaired." Karen nodded, her eyes downcast. "I know, and I'm truly sorry. I let my pride and entitlement get the better of me, and I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to make amends." The chef and the manager exchanged a glance, then the chef continued. "Well, in that case, we have a proposal for you. We'd like you to work with us, volunteering your time and expertise to help rebuild our online presence and repair our reputation. It won't be easy, and it won't happen overnight. But if you're truly committed to making things right, then we're willing to give you a chance." Karen's eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly nodded. Yes, of course. I'll do whatever it takes. I just want to make things right." And so, with a newfound sense of humility and purpose, Karen began the long and arduous process of rebuilding the trust she had so carelessly shattered. It would not be an easy road, but she was determined to learn from her mistakes and emerge a better, more empathetic person. The once entitled Karen had finally faced the reckoning of her own actions, and in the end, it was the hard-won lesson of karma that would ultimately shape her future.